Hi, my name is Veli, the Neuro engineer, and I'm just so excited to be part of this movement, as I call it, which is the Veli Neuro Leadership Engineering Effect. This is about my commitment and this is about my purpose of building a strong and very bold generation of leaders that will be able to take Africa forward, because for the longest time, Africa has been seen and portrayed as the dark continent. But is it really dark? I argue that it is not. It is just all about the leadership mental darkness that we are in. So what I tend to do, what I'm committed to do, is to be able to help build this generation of leaders that will be bold and that will be very strong in moving this continent of ours, this beautiful continent of ours, I must say, from this leadership mental darkness into leadership mental light. And joining me this morning is Dr. Carla Enslin. We'll be talking about everything leadership. We'll be talking about the qualities that really make a leader great, because we cannot be able to move from this leadership mental darkness to mental leadership light if we are not very clear on these qualities and on these, characteristics that a leader, a great leader at that, should have. And Dr. Carla, good morning to you.
Billy, it is so good to see you.
Yes, thank you very much for joining me this morning to discuss this a topic of leadership, which is very, very exciting. And one thing that I talk about when I mention this topic of leadership, or when you talk about leadership, I like to say leadership is not about the position. Leadership is not about, leadership is not a thing that you get and then that's it. But it's actually a privilege for you as a leader to serve. But in order for you to serve, you need to really understand what you're all about. And I think as we're going to be just talking and just unpacking this, I would like us, just for our viewers, maybe just to give us a little bit of your intro about who Carla is. Who is this Dr. Enslin?
My passion is strategy, and specifically brand strategy, which entails uncovering what it is that you stand for. Whether that is a reflection on a person brand, whether it's a reflection on a country brand, a political brand, a city as a brand, an organization as a brand, a product or a service. Anything that wishes to take on a very specific meaning, adding a very unique value to how people live life, again, whether they are considering voting or buying or investing in something, really requires for a brand to strategically consider why it is that it exists. And that is what fascinates me. So I work academically in the world of research around brand strategy, with supervising masters and doctoral students, but I also spend time in industry working with clients across categories, really trying to uncover what it is that their organizations represent. And then, of course, my career has been involved in co-building the brand Vega in context of the Independent Institute of Education. And we offer qualifications from diploma level and higher certificate level right through to a doctorate in this space. We move through 3 portfolios: design, brand building in the communication fields, but also the brand as business. I'm a very blessed individual in the sense that I live in an environment that I find remarkably stimulating. And that is, for the most, dedicated to identity strategy. Yes.
Wow, Carla, that's such a beautiful background, and I'm very, very much keen, just to find out from you, when you talk about leadership, how important it is, for a leader to understand this brand strategy, and to see maybe themselves as a brand. What did you say about that? How important brand strategy is when you bring it to leadership?
I think the first thing that we need to touch on, and Veli, we've known one another for a period of time, and we've shared some platforms together. And in context of yourself as a person brand, it might bring it to life. There's a lot that you work with as Veli. I mean, you are involved in the mechanics of engineering. You've combined this with a study of neuroscience. You live across various public platforms. We met in an environment where you were the MC, and you also use motivation to connect with people. Those three things are the things that you do, from engineering to neuroscience to motivation. But why is it that you do what you do? And I think the way in which you've gone about constructing the construct of it's moving from mental darkness to mental light is such a powerful reflection, but that communicates why you do what you do, why you've connected your background in mechanical engineering with your studies in neuroscience, with your desire to connect with people and ensure that we introduce more leaders to fulfilling the future of a myriad of countries and possibilities on this continent. That in itself demonstrates what can be achieved with a brand and how one should be committed to brand. So I think for me, the starting point would be very careful of considering brand as something that you can do to yourself as a person brand in an artificial manner. You need to really uncover what it is that you do uncommonly well. What is it that you do and that you can contribute to others, to people, to organizations that would really add value to their performance? It's the word I'm working with here is authenticity, but again, we use that word so frequently in boardrooms, so frequently in conversations. It's a very big word. To really be authentic, you need to understand who you are. And for me, that driving force sits in what is it that you do uncommonly well? How are you going to deliver on that? How are you going to sustain that performance over time or sustain that contribution over time? So authenticity has three tiers. It's real uniqueness, it's real performance, and it's sustaining that performance over time.
Wow, and that's basically going to be some sort of like a gist of our, of our discussion, when you talk about authenticity, because this is something that's very key, especially for the leader, and let alone just you as an individual, that you need to be very authentic. You need to have that. But I just wanted to find out, in terms of, someone becoming this kind of a brand, for someone just to, to become this person who has some uncommon, like you put it, like to identify the thing that you do uncommonly well, because I think that's very, very important to understand. So maybe when you look at this, when you look at authenticity, and maybe just before we get to that, what is it when you look at leaders? I mean, like in different industries, because I know you communicate with leaders, I mean, like from different industries. What is this one thing maybe that comes to mind that when you look at leaders, they seem to be missing? That seems to be sort of like stealing this greatness from them.
I think it's incredibly challenging to need to uphold something or to stand for something, to lead something, if you don't have a genuine sense of connect with what it is that you're leading. It's exhausting. And I think we then fail to perform because there is not a genuine sense of connect with what it is that that particular organization stands for, or that particular political party stands for, or what that social movement stands for. I think leadership really sits in that absolute connect between what it is that you do, why it is that you do what you do, and what it is that you choose to lead.
Wow, that is, and this maybe leads me to this question to say, I think one of the myths about leadership is that you are just leading people. You're leading this group of people, but we tend to sort of like overlook the fact that leadership begins with self. Leadership is about, it starts with you, because I normally say that leadership is an inside out process. You first have to be able to lead yourself very well in order for you to lead others, because people are going to look at you as a leader, and that will sort of like have some sort of influence in how they show up, and in how they basically connect with what it is that they need to do. So you become an example, to people. So you don't want to say one thing and then you're doing another thing. So it's all about that connectedness that you spoke about. And would you say that personal branding, before we talk about just leadership branding, where we look at it from, like leading people, where we are looking at starting with leading yourself, as a leader, in terms of how you do things. What would you say about that personal leadership?
I think in terms of personal leadership, and really, I'm so sensitive to little toolkits, because I think often we use them too glibly. But it's as if, for me, you've got 4 C's active. The first C is you really need to be clear on what it is that you stand for, clear on what it is that you do uncommonly well, clear on what it is that you wish to align yourself with, and whether you're going to lead your own movement or whether you're going to connect with an organization to climb that classical ladder. Be clear, be certain. And then you need to be compelling. You need to be able to express what it is that you stand for. You need to be able to connect with others to share what it is that you stand for. So be clear, be compelling, and then be committed, because you have to sustain it in order for people to believe that you are worth investing in, whether they are voting for you, whether they're supporting you, whether they're following you. That sense of commitment really produces authenticity. And authenticity is not something you and I can claim. Authenticity is something that's bestowed upon you. And then I think that 4th C for me personally is be cohesive, be mindful of the fact that you live your life as a full and complete person, and that every aspect of you, and here we use, in the world of strategy, we use the notion of touch points or moments of truth. Everything that I say and do in any context should be a very natural affirmation of who I am. And I'm not a great believer in consistency. I don't think we are ever entirely consistent. I think life is for the most inconsistent. So I tend to hold on to the notion of cohesion. Parts need to move together. And I mean, this is something you would, in the world of mechanical engineering and neuroscience, absolutely connect with. It's as long as I'm always trying to do what it is that I believe I do uncommonly well, parts will work together. Some days I may be a little less consistent. Some performances may be more powerful than others. But in general, the various things that I do move, and parts belong together, parts tend to support one another. So strive as a leader to be cohesive, to always try to do. And for that reason, we also need to be human and humble. We do fail at points in time, but people also connect with leaders because of their sense of elegance in that regard, their honesty, their transparency, their openness.
Yes.
So those 4 C's for me are personally very clear landmarks in leadership and very clear goals to attempt to uphold in most of the leadership strategies that I'm blessed to be involved with.
Wow, Carla, this is awesome. I really love this. The 4 C's of basically of branding, of like you can actually pin leadership on them, where you're talking about clarity, that you need to be very clear in terms of what it is that you stand for. You know, what is it that you are all about? That's number one. And then you're talking about compelling. You've got to be compelling, because if you are very clear, it means you're gonna bring your full self into this game. You know, you're not just gonna be bring some, half measures, and that you're gonna be whole. I mean, put it that way. And then from there, you're gonna follow the run up with commitment. You've got to commit to your cause, because if you don't commit, unfortunately, everything is just gonna fall apart. And then you're talking about cohesiveness, because you've got to be that everything is just moving, but it must move together. You need to have that framework. I mean, in engineering as well, we talk about framework, we talk about structure. So when you talk about this cohesiveness, we're talking about this structure that you need to keep together just to move forward.
Yeah.
And when you look at our leaders. I mean, you look at our country, you look at organizations, you look at all over the place. Because now it's very clear when you look at these 4 C's. What is it that, in terms of this authenticity, people are really battling with when it comes to leaders? Why do they really find it so difficult just to be authentic? Why is it something that is just like so difficult? Maybe maybe just 2 or 3 things, or whatever number that comes to mind for you, that you say maybe these are the top 2 or 3 things that I've observed, to be the culprits.
I think as a community of citizens and as a community of employees in an organization, we also need to be more mindful of what it is that leaders actually need to achieve in circumstances today. I mean, I often hear high levels of criticism around leadership, and I just think of what it is that you need to, at every single touch point in today's environment, what you need to uphold as a leader. And keep in mind, Veli, we live in a world that, and here I'm going to borrow a statement from a colleague. The director of Google South Africa, Dr. Alistair McQuena, who is also one of the supervisors at Vega, who always argues that you've got to consider that we are active in a multi-moment world. We're involved in multi-moment brand building. And if we consider that, imagine what a leader needs to achieve. He or she's active in a world that never goes to sleep, with every single social media platform active and out there, a myriad of touch points. So keep in mind what it is that leaders need to achieve at every single touch point, every moment, and every one of those moments could be overlapping with a myriad of other moments. We're quite tough on our leaders. They go through very exhausting challenges at points in time, and they are constantly exposed. So that just as a thought. But in terms of leadership and what it is that you really need to uphold and where it is that we fail, I think perhaps that starting point of really believing in what it is that you stand for, it is utterly and completely exhausting to have to uphold and lead something if you don't genuinely believe in it.
Wow. And the point that I really love, I mean, you've just mentioned 2 powerful points. I just really love them, and they're mind-blowing. And I think just talking about the first one, where leaders have to be in touch. They need to keep their fingers on the pulse of things because there's so many things happening at once. Do you perhaps maybe have a feeling that maybe that information is not well communicated with those people that leaders actually lead, so that they understand, just to bring them in the know and say, this is what the leader is all about, or leadership is all about, so that they need to understand themselves as leaders as well, that they do not have all the answers, through the challenges of this world. Because I believe that that's one way that you can build this psychological safe, this brain-friendly environment where you communicate, the challenges that are there. You communicate what's at stake. You communicate how to protect what the organization has. Because if you don't do that, you cannot leave it to other people's, assumptions or expectations, or sort of like, how they their interpretations of what's happening. You need, as a leader, to communicate.
Yeah.
I think this is where the element of communication comes in, because you cannot just leave things to other people's interpretations, because they are very open to come up with anything that will suit them. Do you think maybe that the lack of communication maybe contributes to that factor?
Really, I think you're touching on such a raw and critical nerve there. Leadership usually exists in a state of complexity, whether it's an organization, whether it is guiding a country and a citizenry through social upheaval. It's usually in that ecosystem, it's a condition of complexity. And as a community of people, we also need to be mindful of that complexity. We need to be made aware of those complexities, so that we can participate in co-leading, so that we can make a meaningful contribution. So I think the leaders who are demonstrating that they are trying to do all that it is that they stand for, committed to why they do what they do, but who do so transparently, often sharing the complexities with us, are the leaders who are able to perhaps sustain and encourage us to co-create, to participate in the leadership. So those co-creative leaders, I think, are the leaders that will, in all probability, stand strong in these complex spaces, do well, sustain their performance, versus the leaders who uphold a particular image and do not necessarily openly share points of failure, points of difficulty, points of complexity. We enjoy engaging with our leaders. We live in very open systems, in highly connected systems, and leadership can be equally transparent in dealing with those complexities, to ensure that we lean in and we don't lean out.
Yes. Wow, I can just pick up this passion, and maybe just two last questions that I would like just to ask you, Dr. Enslin. If maybe you were just to see, or you see someone who is who aspires to be a leader, who aspires to be a future leader, they tell you that, oh, I just want to be this kind of a leader. I want to get into leadership. What pieces of advice would you give to that person? And maybe, to someone new.
I think leadership comes naturally if you have really succeeded to uncover what it is that you wish to lead. If you truly clear on why it is that you are doing what you're doing. It's not the what, it's that why. And I mean, Simon Sinek is by far the individual who communicates that best and clearly. But there's a lot that we often share about what it is that we do well. Veli is really great at engineering and neuroscience and motivation. But why does really do what he does. It's to move more of us from that state of mental darkness to mental lightness. So if you've uncovered the why and that reason for doing something uncommonly well, and people connect with it, leadership becomes the natural, organic result. Take care to wish to step into leadership or to wish to lead if it is that you are still uncertain of what it is that you actually wish to promote or wish to contribute or wish to shift in how we live life. Really respect what it is that you are about and take some real time and genuine time with yourself to uncover what it is that you're uncommonly well at, and bring it to life in your own words. Take care not to fall trap to all of the popular words that we tend to encounter in everyday communication. We often in the world of strategy refer to these words as wallpaper words. Veli, you and I get to hear them so frequently that they lose their meaning. So, uncover what it is that you stand for and express it in your own language. I mean, for me, your language around lightness, that is the person I met a few years ago. That's the person I connected with. It's your language. The first time you shared your sense of moving from mental darkness to mental lightness with me, I could feel that's Veli's sense of purpose active. And it's your language that you're leaning into. Therein sits the realness. So perhaps feels like a conversation with self at the moment, but once you've uncovered what it is that you do uncommonly well, be truthful to the language that you naturally use, and try not to want to connect with language that you think might impress others. Stay real to yourself. And that is what, I mean, if we think of the leaders that we admire, isn't that what they do so uncommonly well? We can hear them, we can feel them. They are real unto themselves, and clear and compelling and committed and cohesive in what it is that they do.
Absolutely. Wow. I'm just so excited once again. When you look at this, and maybe just the last question, Carla, that I'd like to ask you. Now, at the end of the day, at the end of your life, people are going to say something about you. There are some stories that are going to be said about Carla. What would you like these people to say about you? What message would you like to have, to be said about you, or that you want to, that would like to have, conveyed and left with people? What is it that you would like to be remembered for as Dr. Carla Enslin? The brand strategist.
Veli, I should have known that you would put me on the spot like that. I would hope, if I think of the students that I work with, the very special team of leaders and managers at Vega, and the clients that I have had the very good fortune of working with, that they would argue that I had the ability to really assist teams to uncover their sense of meaning, that I really assisted people to make sense of things. It is my ability to often listen and uncover and eventually assist others to connect dots that I've uncovered is the thing that I do uncommonly well. And I hope that they would remember me as somebody that always assisted others to make sense of what is most important to them, to make sense of complex conditions. So possibly a sense maker in a way, if I were to pull that together.
A sense maker. That's exactly what you are. Dr. Carla Enslin, thank you so very much for joining me. And it's all about this commitment, once again, of building a generation of very strong and very bold leaders that will be able to take this continent of ours, from this very, a mental dark place into a mental lightness. And that's something that's very important. So for me to achieve this, it's all about using both the insights from neuroscience and engineering, because when you put them together, they give you a discipline that are called the Veli Ndaba neuroengineering leadership effect, which is basically all about understanding that the brain, the brain chemicals and our minds are affected by the environment that we find ourselves in. So as a leader, you've got to be very much aware of what kind of environment are you creating, because that kind of environment you are creating will affect either positively or negatively how people do things. Because once people feel threatened, that's what the brain is all about. The brain is always trying to keep us safe by making sure that we survive. So for us to do that as leaders, we need to be very, very, very mindful. That's why I brought you in, because it's very, very important for any person, especially who aspires to be a leader, to understand what they're all about. And to understand that leadership is not just about money. It's not about perks. It's not about, benefits. It's about serving. It's not about you or yourself. It's about making others. It's about being a sense maker to them. It's about bringing out the best in them. So I think on that note, I'd like to say thank you very much once again for being part of this movement that is just going to make a huge difference to those who are aspiring to be leaders and to those who are already in leadership, but who have not just been doing things the right way. And for me, the neuroengineer, I'm saying thank you very much and have yourself a wonderful day further.